Aren't we going to do Ian?
We'll start in about 2 or 3 minutes' time.
Yeah, so you don't have a PowerPoint for him?
I think Colin and I are going to share this issue for each 15 minutes.
You know, but I mean, with Ian's now.
It's Ian's now, yes.
Yeah.
But I just want to let you know that
But you've got a PowerPoint there. That's
I don't have a PowerPoint. I just want you to put your coins on this.
That's for you.
That's for me.
I'm talking about him.
No, not him.
What about this one up there?
That's it.
Oh, it's plugged into his one.
He's using it from his computer.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let's get the next session started.
Okay, I'll shape up.
Over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Will. Well, I want to introduce you to Ian Seisel. Ian is speaking this afternoon about the Acclimatisation Society, which I know what it means, or I know what you're going to talk about, but it's an interesting word.
Yes.
And we look forward to listening to him. Ian's a computer engineer. Joined the society only a few years ago, 2018, but he's become enchanted about the whole scene of coins and numismatics, and I think you collect a bit of everything, don't you?
I do, yeah.
And I think that's how you start off in life. You want everything. And it becomes quite a challenge then when you realise that everything can't be obtained. And you reach a limit to start to narrow your interests. I remember probably the greatest collector in the 20th century on ancient coins was BTD, Basil Dimitriadi. And I was buying catalogues, auction sale catalogues, going back to the 19th century for everything. They said, Colin, forget it. You're never going to get them all, and secondly, they don't really matter. What you really got to concentrate is, if you want to buy these, is buy the ones on ancient coins only. So, oh, well, that's good advice. Well, I try to concentrate on that, but I've still got all these other catalogues you can get rid of somehow. Anyhow, Ian, you can, at a time in your life where you can actually narrow your focus.
I know.
You're doing it today on the Acclimatisation Society, so I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So I'm sort of fairly new at this, but I'm going to try and explain what acclimatisation is first, as a concept, and then I'm going to read a little bit from a paper that was in the British agricultural. So here, Journal of the Society of Arts, 1860. But acclimatisation, firstly, is a term that was coined around the 1850s in Paris, and it was an association that they put together to, to beautify the colonies, because as they expanded their colonies, they were finding that some of the places that they were going to, they found new animals and new plants and new species of animals, and they thought, well, how can we commercialise these? How can we utilise them in our own countries? And also, oh, this is a desert here, how can we beautify it and turn it into our countryside? And that's what acclimatisation is. It's taking a species out of its context and putting it into a new environment and trying to make it work. And that's what acclimatisation is. So, a little bit of history. The first acclimatisation society, as I said, was in Paris in 1854. I won't try to announce the French spelling, but it's the Association of Imperial Acclimatisation in French. It was closely followed by January 1860 in London. They started a similar association, and then eventually the colonies of Australia cottoned on that it was a good idea to get into this acclimatisation, and the first society in Australia was the Victorian Acclimatisation Society. Get this to work.
Technology again.
I know you won't be able to do too much. It's not long enough. the lead. You've got to wrap around.
There it is.
Look, I can give you some slack. I've got to take my old one.
We've got a change of climate.
Oh, no, that's your power there. Don't know how to untangle it.
That's right, leave it like that. I will just go back to there.
No, just
No. I've ruined that, haven't I?
just click on the PowerPoint symbol down the
Yeah,
bottom.
it doesn't do anything. It's gone to the other screen.
You've just got your screen on the PowerPoint ones. That's it. No,
That one.
that's it. Yep. Now click on one of those. No, not coming up.
No.
Oh. Sure what's going on. Want me to have a go?
All best all going well.
No, that's right. No, that's doing the right thing. You want an HDMI?
I had to see, yeah.
Wrong one. Hey, that's
You want
it.
to move up to computer?
No, no, that was right. Nothing to. Sorry.
Well, I'm going to continue without it. It's
I'll have a
easy.
go. I'll see what I can, just quickly have a go.
So I'm going to just read a little bit from the journal of the Society of Arts. And this is by a acclimatisation expert, Frank Buckland. And this is a British paper. He is explaining about acclimatisation, and he said he was at a dinner. He had a good fortune to be invited to dinner, whereby it's now known as the celebrated eland dinner, where for the first time a freshly killed haunch of an African beast was placed on the table in the Aldgate Tavern. The savoury smell of the roast beef seemed to have pervaded the natural world. For a goodly company, we were assembled with all eager excitement. At the head of the table sat Professor Owen himself. So he was the head of the British Acclimatisation Society. He was also a surgeon, and he turned his carving knife and his scalpel skills into the carving of the beast, and it was indeed a zoological dinner, where all 4 points of the compasses were set in front of them. They had a large pike from the west, African partridges that had been shot a few days in the dense woods of the transatlantic east, a wild goose, probably a young bean goose from the north, and an eland from the south. The assembly company, ardent lovers of nature, obviously they're reading it all, they love nature, in all her works. Most of them were distinguished in their individual departments. So acclimatisation was about I've gone to the last one.
Oh, sorry. Hang on there. Just left click, normal left click, goes to the next one. Sorry. No, it's, yeah.
I've gone out of sequence. No, so I've lost a lot. Alright, don't worry about it. Sorry about this. Technology for you. at the dinner, they basically were eating the produce from all over the world, and that was the aim of the society, was to be able to excuse me. Need to be organised. Where they brought the specific species back from the European centres of for cultivation, for sport, and for consumption. And that included plants, animals, and fish from all over the world. In the Victorian society, they were responsible for the introduction of such things as the rabbit, very popular for food. They populated a couple of islands first to see how the species would go. They put partridges in there, and they put other bird life, pheasants and things like that. And obviously the rabbits went rampant and escaped the island, and various, we all know about the rabbits that are plaguing our country now. So the British were also involved in bringing starlings, sparrows, and the European carp into Australia. In the Murray River, for instance. They also had the deer and guinea fowl and trout were all introduced. Some of these are successful, like, you know, the fish life, for instance, but they certainly didn't realise the consequences of bringing in these species that became predators and killing our own, you know, native fauna and flora. One of the other products that they brought in was the white mulberry plant. And if you know what the plant is, it's actually an invasive plant, and it's taken over a lot of the native bushland that we have here. That was brought into so they could start a production of silk. They thought they could have a silk farm introduced into the country. This is all to do with making the country more productive for England. That's the purpose of it.
Did they also introduce foxes?
Well, I think the fox was part of it, yes, for game animals. They wanted game animals, so that this is all the gentry, so they were more interested in what they could get out of the country and send back to England than they were about the actual native countryside. They didn't realise that what they were doing, and it was obviously a lot of these societies ended up being zoological societies after they realised what the damage that they were doing. So the medal, I've got a large version of that. Okay, there it is. This is a medal that was struck in England, and it was done by a medalist by the name of, I'm sorry, I've got this in my notes here. Okay, so the medal was struck by the ABY on, and also helped by Land's deer. It was the family of the Wine family were die sinkers, and it had a long history in England of making medals and coins. This one here was this is one I've got on display there. You can have a look at later. It's a very nice one. It was unsubscribed, so no inscription on it at all. It's just an uncirculated medal, and it's you can see there, 57 millimetres, 104. Nice and chunky, but a very nice medal. Unfortunately, I've lost all my notes in there. I don't know where they've gone, so I'll have to just leave it up for questions if you've got any questions about the Acclimatisation Society or about the medal itself. You can see I'll put it back onto the medal.
Is the society still going at the moment?
No, they got
Surely it would have been prosecuted if it had been.
oh yeah.
And then everything I was going to ask you.
Make them pay all the damages.
The aim was some of the. I've got a few extracts here from this particular paper, which I'll explain what they are thinking of at the time. Yeah, I have mentioned the advantage of acclimatising other animals. There would be no difficulty in apparently acclimatising these animals in Australia, though they've been tried in our country, which is England, that they have tenderness of their foot and they have foot rot. But in Australia, they believe the alpaca was secure in being able to be raised and become a crop that they could draw on. So the alpaca is one thing. They also had the plan to, I've got a good one here somewhere, about exporting some of our animals back to England. And they did do that. They sent kangaroos, obviously all of the native beasts, to zoos and zoological parks in London and Paris. But they were planning to eat, or what they said was the wombat. It would have been a lovely meal to have on the English plate. You know, so they compare. That's what they do. Is they were eating the produce and trying to change the environment that they lived in. And you can see the damage that was caused.
Is Patterson curse one of these plants that was introduced here that came?
Yeah, there's that one. There's also lantana.
Oh, that's
Oh,
bad
You know about
news.
lantana? They're just so invasive. It's just amazing stuff.
What's wrong with white mulberry?
White mulberry is actually a weed. Classed as a weed in Australia. Yeah.
I don't know what it looks like.
See,
So
the
some
white mulberry's used
Some seeds every
I think in
Well, I don't-
China.
Huge.
They find that's the best for
Silkworms.
silkworms,
Yeah.
yeah.
But it's actually a weed in Australia. It's a very invasive one, apparently.
We've got a huge tree, haven't we?
Well, I've got a huge, the normal mulberries, which I've kept the neighbourhood, the children with leaves, to look after their silkworms, because
Well, there are, as I say, there are successful transplanted animals, but I don't think if you were one who lived on the Murray and you had a carp invasion, they just chew up and eat everything.
Who
So
imported
carps.
the Indian minor birds?
Oh,
Sort of
well,
taken
that-
over from the sparrows and
Yeah,
everyone else.
they probably came over with them. They were trying to, as I say, make Australia look like England and bring some of the species across here to make it more like
I
home.
didn't know that.
what about the toads? What bad news that is.
They did that with the first fleet.
Well, they
What?
did. That's actually a good point, because if you read some of the extracts of Banks and those sorts of people and MacArthur, they were going exploring, and what they would do is they would plant seeds in remote areas like Windsor. That was a classic. They'd get up the river and they'd put some seeds in and see how they would go. They come back a year later and see what grew. And then, you know, that's how it all happened.
They weren't responsible for the Queensland cane toad.
No, I don't think so.
Where
That
did
was
the
brought in
possums
for a
go?
reason.
Sorry for that one.
Yeah, well,
Huh?
What about the Argentine ants?
Well, I'm sure they came with other packaging and things. Sorry, I didn't have the rest of the notes up there, but
So what happened with that society in Victoria?
they closed around about 1880, so they went for about 20 years. And then they got replaced by Zoological Society, where they realised what they were doing was wrong, so they just changed the name.
Were they the only society in Australia that needed a coin? Or?
Well, they were also responsible for introducing the possum into New Zealand, because the zoological societies in Australia went to New South Wales, Tasmania, and there's another sister one in New Zealand. And they were sharing animals. So that's how the possum got over there.
We didn't get the kiwi.
And we all know that. No, we didn't get the kiwi.
talking of possums, I saw in your caption up there that possums are introduced to New Zealand, they become a pest because there's no sort of feral animals to sort of get stuck into them. But what gets stuck into the Australian possums other than electric power lines?
Cats.
Yeah, no, well, they do have predators.
Do they?
Yeah.
Not round our joint, they don't have.
They get into your roof.
Did this society produce many medals, or is that the only one?
That's the only one I could find. There was a second one that I should have put up there, but they came in gold and silver and bronze. This is the bronze one. The way they issued them was they would have a criteria that a group of individuals would go for, like introduce a species, they must have mating pairs, and they must produce within a certain amount of time, and if you're successful and you're a part of the society, you get the gold, silver medal, that sort of thing.
Doves are probably in that same category too, I think. Doves?
Doves, I'm not sure about doves.
There is a native one.
But I know animals tend to move around a bit, or birds and so forth, particularly. I remember years ago waking up in the country on farms and hearing the odd caw from a crow.
Oh, yeah.
Now I don't have to worry about going to the country, I get it out the front.
Yeah,
They're out there breeding like
There's no
anything.
crows in Australia.
They sit on my balcony wait to be fed now.
Oh, I'm not feeding them.
Yeah,
Well, they
because
actually,
we feed other things, that come through.
talking
Yeah.
about birds, they wanted to, or they talk about the laughing kingfisher, which is the kookaburra.
Yeah.
And they're comparing it to the other kingfishers, saying this one's, noisy as, makes a lot of noise, not very good at eating. So, but yes, comparisons are quite interesting.
Any more questions?
We could go on and on and on with this
I
one,
know,
couldn't we?
serious, it does focus on the possibility of these medals. You can talk about societies, that,
We'll have a look at it.
particularly some of the more obscure societies that were formed in the 19th century.
Yeah.
Ian, it's mostly enjoyable. Here's your
Thank you.
reward for a great effort and thank you. Now, at this point in time, David and I are going to do a couple of presentations. He's putting me first because it's on PowerPoint, and I think his is something a bit more graphical with the camera. But I have, over the years, given lectures at Macquarie University to the Society for the Study of Early Christianity, and they have had me back a few times, and I don't know whether you know much, but they have a big annual conference, and some hundreds of people turn up, mostly everyone from clergy to interested people on biblical science and so forth. And occasionally I've been several times I've been the guest speaker, one of the guest speakers, to talk about biblical coins. And I think back, I've done this talk there. I don't know whether any of you people have ever seen the presentation I've done on biblical coins, but I think you'll find it very fascinating and interesting. And so that's what I want to show you now, if we can.
We've got
Tune
to
in.
hang on, I'll do it.
Mind just pressing the button, the select button.
Source.
That's it. Next. Just to get, that's it. Okay.
Start it up.
This may not work straight off because I think it's logged me out.
Slideshow. Try it.
I'll try it though.
That should work.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So this is a title view of it. That coin is quite interesting. I'll tell you a bit more about it in a moment or two. It's just a heading to show you that. These are coins which have links to the Bible, have links to Israel and the Jewish fraternity of people. Very interesting historical links can be established, and I'll show you some of these now in the next few slides next time. Now what we're talking about, here's a map of the various kingdoms that existed 2,000 years ago in what today is Israel. And you see the kingdom of Israel at the top part, and then we have down here the kingdom of Judah and the kingdom of Edom and various tribal groups around the place. All of these people were active groups at the time of the conversion, or the time of Herod and other rulers at the time, and they all have a part to play. You see Petra down there, which is still a very important archaeological site. Okay, next slide. So we have this rather unique coin that kicks off the scene. This is a unique shekel in the British Museum. It's struck before 333 BCE. The reverse shows a seated deed on a winged wheel and a bearded lower mast lower right. You can see it quite clearly. Described by Hill, who was at that time I suppose the curator of numismatics at the British Museum in 1914, and others as the first Jewish coin following the description in Ezekiel, which says that the deity is as the God of Yahud, that is, the God of Israel. Gittler, Hans Gittler, a good friend of mine and Tal, in 2006, suggested it is the product of the Philistinian mint produced by Edomite Jews and one of the earliest coins of the Yehud series. But in the 19th century, this coin was really a very important artifact, if you like, because it showed God looking on man and Ezekiel. The whole biblical scene is on this coin, produced something like 300 BC. An important acquisition. It's unique. I acquired a coin exactly the same as that, which was the electrotype of it. And I had a friend of mine, a member of the society here, Peter Dunson, who, being a clergyman, really wanted to have that coin. I said, you can have it as a gift. So I don't have that coin, the electrotype of it anymore. Next slide. So we have the Persian Empire, which was the controlling power at that time in the 4th century BC, before Alexander the Great and so forth. And they are issuing gold coins, and we have the first reference to a coin in the Bible, the Persian gold daric, stuck in the time of Darius I and Xerxes II in the 5th century. The obverse shows the Persian king kneeling with spear and bow. The shekel is a weight measure, and it's now became a coin later on. It was mentioned in the Bible, but the daric is mentioned in a number of references. Chronicles, Ezra, Nehemiah, Ezra mentions the verse of 1,000 darics of gold and 5,000 pounds of silver. So anyone who owns a coin like that, they've got a coin that's one of the first biblical coins mentioned, the gold daric. There are silver ones that look like that too, but they didn't get the mention, except it's probably part of the story, but not in that implication there. Yeah, next slide. This is a very interesting coin, and I will say that what's happened in Israel in the last 20 years, beside all the famous Qumran discoveries of the Dead Sea Scrolls and so forth, is that so many coins have been found which were never known about before. Mostly tiny coins which only weigh about 0.2 of a gram or so. One of them coins is a Yehud silver darash, issued about that same period, 333 BC. This is before Alexander the Great, because these are coins before Alexander came into that area. The obverse is the lily, the symbol of Jerusalem, and the reverse is a falcon with the Hebrew word, which you can see on the right there, meaning Yehud, which is the Persian name for the province of Judea. So we have a reference to an area in the biblical area of what we know in the Bible, which is on coins today. And there are many more have come since then. Yes, next one. Then in the period of the 2nd century, we have the rise of the Hasmoneans. Hasmoneans became the kings of the various regions, and this particular one was the king of Judea. the Maccabean king is John Hyrcanus I, Alexander Jannaeus is another one, and on the legend in Hebrew is written the words Jehoram, the high priest and the council of the Jews. So it's actually telling you that this is the coin issued with the authority of the council of the Jews and the high priest, because the kings were, besides being kings, were the high priest. This becomes quite important in a moment or two. Carry on. The succeeding ruler was Alexander Jannaeus. The chronology of these things is pretty fixed, but which coins associate with which particular ruler, there's a bit of an overlap, and there's a lot of copying done by people at the time to make coins that would be acceptable. So here we have the bronze pruta of Alexander Jannaeus from 104 to 76 BCE, which is BC in terms of our era. We have the palm on the obverse, you can see it there with the legend, and the reverse is lily, and the legend reads again, Jehoiakim as a king. So we have this link, the man is a king, he's also the high priest. Okay. The last of the rulers was a man called Matthias Antigonus. Matthias Antigonus was an extraordinary man. He faced an enemy. He had the support of the Persians, but the people that he faced under the heading of a man called Herod had the support of Rome. So quite clearly there's a civil war going on, and Matthias Antigonus had to tell the people that I am the legitimate king, I am your high priest, I'm everything. And then he put a coin out called the menorah coin. This is one of the most valuable pieces of copper in the world. They weigh about a gram, and you can see that they're worth over 100,000 each. About 30 examples survive. The little anecdotal story I can tell you about is that I was at a stacks auction with Jim Noble back in the middle, I suppose, 1990s, 93, 94. And the auctioneer is going on, and we're viewing. And one of the card lots had about 10 coins on it, and included a number of issues of the Hasmoneans, but also had a few other coins which interested me, and the estimate was about $1,000 or $1,200. And they described the coin as the coin of Herod. And I looked at it, it was like that. The reverse was as good as you can see the Lord's table on it, but the other side, where the menorah is, there was no menorah, 5 candlesticks, all you got was one candle. And you could barely work that out. But the ledger was right. And I looked at the coin, I said, this is a Matthias Antigonus menorah coin, and they don't understand it. They missed it. And this is a big Jewish firm in New York, and you'd think they would be on the ball on their Jewish coins, but in this particular case, they had missed it. And it wasn't until many years, or some years later, I was showing Peter Dunstan the coin, and I said, this is a coin I think that comes from the, the book written on. I showed him the book, and I said, it's supposed to be from that collection, but that coin they're illustrating there is not this coin. But Peter said to me, that is a coin. You don't recognise it. They're using the side of the Lord's table on your coin, but because the other side's so poor, they've grabbed a picture from one of the books called Riefenberg on Jewish coins and stuck it in the book. I'll think of the name of the author and the big collector. I had that in a moment or two. But anyhow, the main thing was that this was the last issue of the Maccabean dynasty, a desperate issue by Antigonus to win against the battle by getting people's support. It's a bit like what's happening in Ukraine today. He was proclaimed king of the Jews in 40 BC. He was also the high priest. He was telling them, on my coins, I am both. Not only your king, I'm the high priest. Why support this other infidel that's coming along and trying to take over the country? These coins are quite exciting, and they bring tremendous sums of money. Why are they important? Because this is the first appearance of the menorah on a coin. The Arabs copied it some 500 or 600 years later on some of their coins, and they're quite scarce. But here was the appearance of the coin on a coin legitimately at the time. And it had an important message to tell. Next slide. So, this is the story. Being a Jew, he did violate the Jewish law against religious objects from the temple being put on a coin. As you know, the Lord's table was one part of it, and the menorah was also involved in the temple. It was a desperate propaganda tool to use the menorah and showbread table on the coinage. The issue was designed by the Jews to fight and rally them against Herod, like I've explained it to you. The southern branch menorah was central to the Jewish faith and described in the Old Testament, Exodus, whatever. The menorah was a symbol of the Jewish temple, destroyed in 70 BC, AD, Christian era, CE, AD, and became the symbol of Jewish faith. So you remember the famous pictures, even on the Arch of Titus in Rome. You see the menorah being carried there as booty, if you like, by the Roman general Titus under the rule of Vespasian when they captured and sacked Jerusalem. So Herod unfortunately won the battle. He had the support of the big army. And he issued a number of coins, and I've owned most of these at one time or another, and I'll tell you what happens in the war eventually. Above is a bronze 8 prudet of Herod I, quite a popular coin. It has the military helmet on one side and the tripod on the other side, and if you look around and read the Greek, being a Greek link, and he writes not in Hebrew, but he writes Herod King, or Herod Basileus. The symbol, the monogram, was curiously used in the mid-4th century CE, the monogram like a Christogram, a central point in the evolution of the Cairo monogram and the Christian cross. Now, what's very interesting about it is that Christians obviously believe in the cross, which you see on churches and so forth. And is a very interesting facet of it, that it evolved from the famous Cairo symbol, which is a symbol of cross, the CH, and the row is a P, which is R, so it's the beginning of the word Christ. Now, you know, I thought this was all very fascinating. This has nothing to do with Christ, it's a symbol that was used. But I'm talking about the Christogram as a symbol, because when I was in Turkey one time, I came upon a sarcophagi, which was dated to the mid-4th century, and it linked in with coins, because it showed on the side a symbol like that. And this was a Christian site because it had the symbol of the modified Cairo symbol. Now, the first Cairo symbol appears on Roman coins too in the middle of the 4th century. Then it evolved into a symbol like we have on that coin there, and eventually they removed the top part of it and became the cross. So, in a way, it's an evolution of the name, Christ. Obviously, a lot of people symbolise the cross as what Christ was crucified on, which, again, a question of learning table, whether it's a cross like that or a vertical cross. I'm not too sure. So, that's the evolution of the cross. That's the fact. Next one. Herod died, of course, in 4 BC, and you know the stories in the Bible about what happened there, when he tried to kill all the boys because he believed that someone else was going to be the next king. Anyhow, another king came to the throne, Herod Archelaus, who issued a copper pruta coin. He was the son of Herod the Great, and he became the ethnarch of Judea, which is an area, I pointed out to you, where he was responsible for. His tyranny and excesses were so offensive that in the 9th year of his reign, his subjects sent a delegation to Rome to complain to Augustus. Now, you got to remember, Herod at this time had the support of Rome, so he was a sort of a minor satellite of Rome, but he kept a high degree of independence. But when the people complained, they said, well, we're going to a higher authority, and the highest authority in the area was a Roman emperor, and this time it was Augustus. He was thus banished to Vienna in Gaul. It's not Vienna in Austria, Vienna in Gaul, city that's in Gaul. But when he heard that Archelaus did reign in Judea in the room of his father Herod, he was afraid to go thither, so Matthew talks about it there. Next slide. Herod Antipas came in also as another ruler. He was issuing coins up in Tiberias, which is northern near the Sea of Galilee area. This is a bronze issue of Herod Antipas, issued about 29 to 30 AD at Tiberias in year 33. And if you know your Greek, Lambda Gamma, which you can see on the right-hand side of that palm tree, is the word 33, the numbers for 33. Herod is a man often referred to in the New Testament, so it makes a positive link to the biblical coin. He ordered the execution of John the Baptist, and Pontius Pilate sent Jesus to Antipas when he learned he was a Galilean. Now, we know that the ordering of the death of John the Baptist was a bit of a debatable thing. I say that he ordered the death of it because it was his authority that authorised it. the local ruler of that area was called Aristobulus, and his wife was a woman called Salome. Now, no one knows much about these two, except that recently a horde's turned up, which features Aristobulus on one side and Salome, named on the coin. So she was a historical person, and she does exist. Those coins were, I never knew about until about 3 years ago. There's been a selection of them being put on auction. These have been turned up as a hoard. Next one. Now we have other rulers at the time in that part of the world, was Herod Philip. Bronze coin of Herod the Philip is the first husband of Salome, his niece. Sort of had a little bit of relationships there between different people. Luke 3:1 states, now in the 15th year of the reign of Tiberius Caesar, Pontius Pilate being governor of Judea, and Herod being tetrarch of Galilee, and his brother Philip tetrarch of Etruria, and the region of Trachonitis, I think it is. Okay, so we have the divisions of the territories that we have on that map being owned by various members of the family, a bit like we had with Napoleon. Agrippa I, the next ruler from 37 to 44 AD, he acquired through Caligula the kingdom of his grandfather, Herod the Great. So he got back his control of this particular area. He ordered that James, one of the 12 apostles, be beheaded and placed Peter in prison. You can read all about this in various accounts in Acts. The B below indicates it's year 2, which corresponds to 37-38 AD in the reign of Caligula. Next one. So the Romans now had taken pretty much control. These were minor kings, subservient to the real Roman control of Judea and the areas around there, particular places like Caesarea, Jerusalem, and those sort of places. So the Roman procurators of Judea started issuing their own coinage, not in their name, but only in the name of the emperor, and they put a year on it so we know who issued what. So Herod Archelaus was banished, as we mentioned. His territory was placed under the government of Roman procurators who were subordinate to the prefect of Syria. Now it's a sort of hierarchical order the Romans were establishing in this part of the world. So the procurator in Judea was a man, first one was Coponius. He was 6 to 9 AD. So it all happened very quickly after Herod's death and the death of his son. This was a Jerusalem mint issue. The regal year is 36, which you can see again, L is a symbol for year. On the right hand side of that palm tree you see lambda, the Greek letter lambda, which is 30, and although it looks like a gamma, actually it's an S. It's like an S. It kicks off like a gamma, then goes a loop underneath it. That's 6. So that's the year 36. We have the grain ear on one side, a palm tree across the field. Next one. Now the following procurators also issued coins, Marcus Ambibulus and Valerius Gratus. They issued their own coins. Again, you can read the one on the lower left there. It's Lambda Thea, so that becomes year 9, 39. So we know that was dated to Marcus Ambibulus, described there. And then a procurator Valerius Gratus, who was issuing under Titus now, because as you know, Augustus died in 14 AD. So Titus was now, Tiberius was now the current emperor. So we have a new dating system coming into play, and this was dated year 11. 10, and the letter, although it looks like a lambda, is actually A. A is the first letter of the Greek alphabet, the letter number 1 in the numeral system. So it's year 11, and it's counting in the reign of Tiberius. So there's a description of the coin there. Next one. Probably the most sought after all the procurator ones are the ones with Pontius Pilate, links to Pontius Pilate coins. This is I've probably handled a number of these over the years. And by chance I bought a collection at auction back in 1992, and they had them in the flips that folded up one another. And I thought, oh, one day I'm going to break this up. It was only a few weeks ago I broke it up. And bingo, I found had another coin of Pontius Pilate. People were asking me, have you got a coin of Pontius Pilate? I said, I've sold them all. Well, I still found another one. It's in the next auction, I think. If you really want one, you can buy it there. Well, Pontius Pilate coins have been a good investment in many respects, because basically, although there's a lot of them out there, they are commanding more and more money as people want a Pontius Pilate coin now, a biblical coin. But beside that, as I'll come to in a moment, you'll see he's a historically interesting person. So here we have the Pontius Pilate coins during the reign of Tiberius, and we can see that Z, L-I-Z, year 1 is 10, Z is 7, so it's the 17th year of the reign, which corresponds to 3031 AD. Now, we are, for those of people that believe, we believe that Christ was a real person, but when did he get crucified? It's uncertain, but it's either year 17 or 18 or whatever. It doesn't matter, you're covered by these coins. So this is year 17, and you can read about it in Matthew. Remember, this was prepared for a biblical group of mostly learned clergymen and professors, one over from universities, teachers biblical studies. Next slide. So he issued other coins as well. The issue that was 1 year earlier has a number of things on it, which is, you can see the 3 bound grain ears and the stipulium, which is a religious object on the left-hand side, although it's through the reverse, so it's a bit mixed up there in terms of obverse and reverse. These are the issues, again, sought after, and these are dated again. L-I, and that S-like symbol, after you read it on the obverse there, that tells us it's year 16, which corresponds to 29 to 30 AD. So, a bloke called Cohen has written a book, this thick, I've got a copy at home, of all the dated coins of antiquity. And you know, if you're in doubt when you sort of find that so many coins were dated, but you just have to know what era they're talking about. In this case, we're talking about the regal year of the Roman Emperor. But sometimes it's the regal year or the year of the beginning of a particular group, like the Seleucids or Alexander or someone like that. So it's a tricky. So you need a book like this to work out what year that it tells me, and then you can work it out. What you read the date, what is that year in terms of our AD understanding. So that is year 16 of the reign of Tiberius. Next slide. Now, this is very interesting. We all have heard of Pontius Pilate, and most people sort of say, well, is he a real person? You don't really know. But only fairly recently, a few years ago, there was found this stone as an inscription on a building at Caesarea, which is on the coast. It had a Latin inscription that mentions the Tiberium, a building built by Pontius Pilate, the prefect of Judea, and what is more important, it has his name on it. And so this is rather unique, the first non-biblical unique inscription with Pilate's name recorded that's found in an archaeological context. So the land did exist, and you have to accept them, the sources that we have, either Josephus or the Bible, that what he did. But we now know to exist from a whole temple stone there, which was found at Caesarea, which was a contemporary of the time of his life. Next slide. Okay, this is stuck in there to show you that the Romans were issuing gold aurei, and there was this sort of paternal links with various members of the family. Vitellius, Trajan, and others put members of their family as much as they can to honour them if they could. And in this case we have Aulus Vitellius honouring his more capable father, Lucius Vitellius. He was a bit of a glutton, this man was. He was one of the 4 emperors, so in 69 AD, and he slipped into the position for a little while. According to his accomplishments, the senior Vitellius was the marriage of the daughter to Octavia, hence the removal of Pontius Pilate as governor of Judea. He obviously did something wrong. He's obviously doing the major thing. And the consulship he shared with the Emperor Claudius in 43 AD. So Claudius left Lucius Vitellius in charge of Rome when he left to conquer the Britons, of course. As you know, Britain was conquered in 43, 44 AD. Okay. Another procurator that succeeded Pontius Pilate was Antonius Felix. He was around for 14 years or so, and here we have the regal year 14 of Claudius's reign. K-A-I means Caesar, but above the I-A-I bit you see I-E, I delta, I delta, now you've learnt, is I stands for 10, delta stands for 4, fourth letter of the Greek alphabet. So it's year 14 of the reign of Claudius. Claudius was now started in 41, so it's got to be around about 55 AD, 54 AD. There's a description of what the coin looks like. It's in the name of Nero now on the coin, because Nero's the emperor. And the palm tree on the reverse shows the date, and this is in the name of Britannicus. Now, Britannicus was the unfortunate brother, or half-brother, of Nero, and a potential rival to the throne. But Nero didn't want a rival, so he had him removed. And of course, there are coins now with his name on it, and they disappear. He just doesn't have his coins named anymore. He was younger. He was quite popular too, but anyhow, we move on. Next one. Agrippa II, following Agrippa I and others, struck coins over a period of about 40 years, but only scattered times. Here we have a large bronze coming from him, issued at Caesarea Paneas, another city in that area, occupied by the Romans. And he, of course, is the local Roman nominee king, but the power is with the emperor. It's important to mention that it's there because Paul almost persuaded him to become a Christian. In Acts 26 it says, King Agrippa, do you believe in the prophets? I know that you do. And Agrippa replied to Paul in a short time, you'll persuade me to become a Christian. It was an interesting sort of link with that man that's portrayed there. Next slide.
Oh, sorry.
All right, go back. One of the more famous coins of ancient times, which a lot of people want to collect, is the tribute penny. This is a silver denarius of the Roman Emperor Tiberius, and it's referred to in Mark 12 as well as other places. Bring me a penny. Whose image and superscription? Caesar's. And Jesus answered them, said to them, render to Caesar the things of Caesar, and to God the things that are God's. Now, you may remember that, if you remember your Sunday school or whatever, but this was a sort of demonstration he did of showing that the power he had with God was far different to the power that the Roman emperor had. And he said, Caesar owns the coins, you should give to him, you tax it. But give to God the things that are important to God. And curious enough, Tiberius basically only issued one coin type in the whole of his reign. He did issue a couple of chariots on it in the very early in 1415 AD, but once the issue came out declaring the Pontiff Maximus, or Maximum, declaring him as the high priest, it was sort of a religious coin as well as everything else. And so basically Tiberius thought this was a good thing to tell the world, competing against all these rival religions that were going on. I am the boss of religion, I am the high priest. And so that coin became the standard coin for something like 30 odd years. The only problem we have about all this is that very few of these coins are ever found in Israel. They're mostly found they're made in Lugdunum mostly, which is in France. Lyon's the current name. So the link between that place and Israel is very hard. Only 2 or 3, I believe, from Chaim Gittler and others have told me have ever been found in Israel. So could he have shown him a coin of those? Probably not. Maybe showed him a coin of Augustus or something. It was a Roman authority coin that was shown, a silver Roman authority coin, and that's why they came up with that remark. Next one.
Oops. What happened then?
No,
Did I just jump over it?
no, just go back
From
the current slide. That's it. Next one. Well, there are many other important biblical coins, and everyone always refers to the shekels of Tyre. The famous 30 pieces of silver. I had an experience. Well, there's a reason why. I'll tell you a story, mate. Shekels of Tyre are known to be of pure silver and good weight. They're always weighing about 14 grams. Every Jewish male over the age of 20 had to pay a temple tax of half a shekel. So coins were made in this denomination, and it goes right back to Exodus when they're talking about it. This is a silver type coin that's known as the payment to Judas for his 30 pieces of silver. Read Matthew. The letters KP, of course, on the reverse indicate, believed to indicate that each was made in Jerusalem. Also related to parallels, etc., and silver coin above. On the left-hand side, we have a date, and that is all part of the chronology. You can work out the date of every one of these coins. And I'll tell you a story that's interesting. I don't know, it must have been 20, 25 years ago. A gentleman came into the office. He had been buying a few interesting things, but not much. He said, well, I want to buy 30 pieces of silver. I said, have I told you the story before? Anyhow, he sort of said, I said, you mean shekels of Tyre? He said, yes, that's what I want. I said, they don't come cheap, you know. He said, I know that. But it turns out he's a multi-millionaire, he didn't worry about money, he just wanted to have 30 pieces of silver. I said, well, I have one. But he said, how much will it cost me? I said, I think I said about $50,000 you want to buy 30 pieces in reasonable condition. So he said, all right, here's a cheque for 50,000. You've got 6 months to find them. Here's a challenge, 30 pieces of silver. So I had a lot of good contacts, sold biblical coins in America and elsewhere. And, you know, within 2 to 3 months I had 30 pieces of silver. And he saw them all, I had it all ticketed up with usual noble tickets and the full description of the year and everything else. And he was very excited about that. We've done the thing, very pleased. I said, what are you going to do with these? He said, I'm putting them in a bowl. I said, what for? He said, well, take the tickets out. He took the ticket, he separated them off for all this hard work I did, threw the tickets aside, put them in a bowl. I said, why are you doing that? He said, I have a big business empire in China, apparently. And he said, when I have people visit me, I'm going to have this bowl sitting on the table. And this is it tells them a story about the 30 pieces of silver. And I've got the 30 pieces here. But I thought, well, I've heard the stories being stretched out, but this was being stretched out really well. So he bought them, and he had paid for them. And then came the next part of the story. About 5 years later, he rings me up again. He said, you remember me? I can't even remember his name now. But he said, yeah, I do remember. You bought the shekels. He said, I want to sell them. I said, no, didn't bring you the good luck you were hoping for, I suppose. He said, well, they didn't work very well for me. I had a bad run over there for a while. I thought, these must be the shekels that are causing the problem. So I want to sell them. So we negotiated the price. Obviously, it wasn't quite the amount of money he paid for them. And I took them back and I said to Jim, are we buying these? Yes. You buy them, Colin, we'll own them and we'll do whatever we want to do with them. So, all right. So I bought them, 30 pieces of silver. And they looked lovely on it, one of these big trays, 2 trays like that, each one had its coin on it. It lost its identity with the tickets and so forth, but that didn't matter, I could still look it all out. Anyhow, I just bought them, put a display of some of them on the tray at the front. No, I didn't even do it, we put them in the safe. A chap came in, into the office. This is going international, probably VLC if I know. And he said, my name is so-and-so, and I'm the mayor of Noble. I saw the sign out the front, Noble. I said, Noble? You're the mayor of Noble? Where's Noble? He said, Oklahoma. Oh, big time in Oklahoma. And he said, my son's with me, he's a clergyman, he's just been taking a ministry position in New Zealand. He just happened to land in Australia first. And so he said, I'm just curious to see what coins there exist, you know, ancient Roman. And he said to me something about, do you ever get biblical coins? I said, yeah, strange enough, we do get a few biblical coins. And he picked out a couple of prutas are on display. And we got chatting about things and so forth. And I said to him, would you like something really special to see? He said, yeah, I'd love to see it. I said, I got 30 pieces of silver, because his son looks at it and said, what? 30 pieces of silver? I said, 30 pieces of shekels of Tyre, which are the coins that we were talking about. Oh, can I see them? So I said, Jim, bring the coins. I said, Jim brings out the tray full of the 2 trays with these 30 pieces on. I think we had enough holes for every one of them. This one's only holds 20, so it must have been a bigger tray. But they're all on the one tray. And he looks at me, this is amazing. This is unbelievable. Can I touch one? I said, yeah, you can touch one. Are they for sale? I said, are we selling these at the moment, Jim? We're just bought. He knows we just bought the damn thing early that morning. And they're back here on the trays. Someone wants to buy them. Oh, he said, look, I'd like to have one of those. Are they expensive? I said, well, you pick out the best one there. Well, you're going to have to pay $2,500 or $2,000, I think was the price. But if you get to the running bad ones, it's down to $1,000. Well, we said, so him and his son had a little garbled conversation. They work out, yeah, we'll take that one, that one, that. They bought about 4 of them. And, you know, I thought, this is amazing. I only just bought the things and we're making a profit on it already. So he bought them and paid for them and went his merry way. About 2 years later, he comes back in again. He's on a trip to Australia. He said, have you got any of those shekels left? You know, I said, tell me the story. He said, well, I'll tell you what happened. I took these 4 coins that we bought, which was presumably one of the best ones, and I took them back to Noble in Oklahoma, and I showed them to an archaeologist there, and he said, oh, you be careful with them. They're fakes. Fakes, you know, be careful. That's the sort of thing they sell in Jerusalem and at the tourists. Oh, he said, the gentleman out there said they were pretty real. I said, well, okay, why don't you get them checked? He said, well, I suppose I can. So he sent them to the grading company over in America that does the grading of ancient coins and authenticates them. And he got them back a few months later, and they came back with the words, these were definitely genuine, they're the best ones we've ever had in their survey of these things, best examples. So he come back to Australia to buy more. He came back and he bought another 2 or 3. And so that's the story of the 30 pieces of silver. They all went. I have people coming in for one now, I can't give them one, I don't have any. They're all sold. You know. And I think Jim made a nice little profit out of it all, so yeah, it was quite a good deal. So that's the shackles of Tyre. And people have an association, an attachment to some of these coins which have appealed to them because of their symbolic representation. You know, I once had a person buy a Ptolemaic tetradrachm. Now you can handle a coin here, I think it's very interesting, fascinating, but you don't get into a vibrational fight over it and think, oh, this is heaven. I'm healing the bribes of history in my hands. You know, this guy carried on for about 5 minutes. I said, are you going to buy this coin, or are you just going through an experience? He said, I want to buy it. I can't believe the feel. I can feel it in my hand. Some people have got good imagination of these things. Anyhow, so is that the last bit there, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's unfortunate because that's an earlier version. I wish I could have shown you that one. Anyhow, it doesn't matter. There is another later version I've done. I just grabbed one that was on the computer, but there are 3 there, and I didn't know if it was the latest version. But the most important coin that's turned up in historical terms is a coin that came out of Asia Minor, and I forget the name of the town now. This is a nuisance because I get my... Anyhow, what it features on the back is Noah and his ark. And the other features, of course, are Noah and his wife, a little dove, picture of the ark, floating away in the sky. And that's another coin that attracts a lot of attention. They bring unbelievable sums of money. When I say unbelievable, I think the last one sold for like 200,000 Swiss francs, which is like 300,000 Australian dollars. I mean, coin generates that enthusiasm with people because of the historical association. Tribute pennies are always the best seller. You always sell tribute pennies. You know, can't really get enough of them. And Pontius Pilate coins in the same boat. Yet if I try to sell, I had a customer come in, and he was a fairly significant clergy person. He's got one who does all these travel tours and talks, and he works at Moore College and so forth, on Christianity, and he always likes to give a little widow's mites away. He asked me if I could give him a widow's mite. I said, oh, yeah. How many do you want? He said, oh, 20 or 30. So I agreed upon a price. Yeah, I'll bring it in. So I gave him, sold him to him. He was very happy with it. He keeps giving out his presents to people, widow's mite. It sort of has an impact value. Yet if I gave him a Roman coin of Constantine, it wouldn't have the same impact value. The widow's mite does, because it's a tiny little thing that's mentioned in the Bible, like Pontius Pilate coins are. So there are other facets about this, and I go on. The latest version will have a bit about Salome in it, which I told you about, what his coin looks like, what Salome looked like. She wasn't a raving beauty either on the coin, so you think to yourself, what have people seen, some of these women? But that is an overview of biblical coins. The references I quote, which are quite important, is David Hendon. He's updated some of these things. Of course, a new volume has just come out, which I've just acquired. I haven't got it at home yet, but it's a newer version of his work on biblical coins. He's made a lifetime study of it and written a number of books as well on it. But it's an area of interest now. I was fascinated by this because I built up a very important collection of biblical coins, the best one I've ever found in this country. I tried to sell it to the Holocaust Museum. I had someone who was intermediately on a negotiated sale for me, but they weren't buying coins, they were looking for more other objects. So they missed out. So I sent it to America and sold it. If you ever want to look at that collection, if you look up C&G's listing and look under the Maclay collection, M-A-C-L-E-A-Y, you can see all the coins, including my menorah coin. I sold that menorah coin in the auction there, and Victor was, and this coin was a really rough one, believe me, you can't see the menorah, it's got to be pretty bad. But Victor contacted me, I said, yes, what's this menorah coin? There's 3 or 4 people wanting to buy it, irrespective. And I think it sold for 32,000 American dollars or another. For something that cost me less than $5, it wasn't a bad deal. The only interesting thing about that little purchase for that coin in America back in 20, 30 years ago, I forget which stack sale it was the fact that as soon as I bought it, Jim said, "Why'd you buy all that for?" I said, "Well, there's a coin in it I'll tell you about." But another guy who had obviously in the know come rushing up to me, "Did you buy that lot?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "You want to make a good profit on it?" I said, "No, not really. At the moment I want to keep it." I knew what he was after, the menorah coin. But anyhow, that's the story of the biblical coins. Okay. I hope you enjoyed that. That's not bad. I didn't prepare for that tonight.
It's a shame you gave it today because next month our topic is Egypt and Israel.
Oh, well, he's done the Israel.
Yeah, so you can bring Egyptian stuff next time.
Well, I don't have too many. I have
Cleopatra.
a few. Cleopatra.
Well, she wasn't all that good looking either.
No, you look at the coins, you say, what did they see in there? What did Mark Anthony and Julius Caesar see in there, you know?
It took anything in.
David, you're right, Neville.
Yeah, okay.
Before you go, Col, I did a introduction to Israel postal orders in the last postal order news, and I found that they read from right to left.
Yeah. Back to
Well,
front.
when did that get introduced? Because you're
Oh,
reading all those coins left to right.
No, because they were Roman. Romans do it logically like we do. But the Greeks, well, the Greeks don't have any breaks, the ancient Greek don't have any breaks in the words anyhow. They just got one continuous strand of letters. But a lot of countries write it backwards, you know, Indian, Parsi.
We got one more to
Was
go,
that
have
back
we?
in that era?
Yeah,
we?
yeah.
Yeah.
They'd always
Well,
done
look,
that.
Shall I leave
think
those
it was a
banknotes,
custom how they
those
presented it,
INS
how
banknotes
you
with you
read
for
these
the
things,
auction? No.
right to left,
I've
left
got
to
more than
right.
enough.
But people seem to make sense of it all, you know. It's like driving on the right-hand side of the road or the left-hand side of the road, depends where you are.
And the dating seems to be like a hieroglyphics type of thing.
No, the dating on Latin is actually in
No,
these, not in
Israel,
Greek.
Israel.
Israel. Oh, Israel coins. Yeah. They got their own dating system using
In Hebrew.
Hebrew writing. I mean, you've got to get the book out and read it and work it
Yeah,
out.
no.
You think that's a challenge? You want to start trying to work out Tibetan dates, or better still, Nepalese dates.
Oh, okay.
And Nepal, I've been cataloguing Flynn collection of Nepal, and there's thousands of these coins, and I've still got more to do. Nepal, as a country to collect, has an extremely difficult dating system, because up to some numbers like 8, 7, 6, have 8 different ways of writing it. And some of the numbers look exactly like some other number. So how do you work out what number? Obviously some are better, but they changed even in one reign. You can have the same thing, even in the one number. You can have 2 versions of the same number. You know, it's a challenge. Thank you very much.
Very good, thank you. I'm going to make this too long, because I know we're getting close to going home time, and the early night would be useful for many who catch trains and stuff. This is a coin that refers to things that are going on in the world right now. And I've had this book on my library for a while. It's a hard read, because history always is in detail, called Medieval Russia, 980 to 1584. And it underlies a lot of what's going on in that part of the world today. And I looked this out because I particularly wanted to show a map of the region before I start coins. And I haven't got a PowerPoint presentation, so what we'll need to do here is just change this to the camera.
Back to video.
How do I get up and down? Oh, there you go, that's it. Yeah. I want to talk before I show any coins, to talk just about the beginning of Russia. Beginning of Russia. I mean, it's always been there, and there's always been populated. And if you follow even the times of the Romans, and especially the Eastern Roman Empire, you'll see that they were always fighting in the people, the various tribes, most of whom names have even disappeared out of memory. But this is, sorry, let's get it focused.
Should come back.
So eventually the whole sort of area of today's Russia, Ukraine, east, west and north and so on, was essentially in the Middle Ages populated by Slavic people, as it is now. But it was not organised, just warring against each other, and the Vikings themselves from Scandinavia realised that there was a whole world to the east and south of them. Their world was the Baltic, and those on the western side, their whole world was, you know, Iceland and even Vinland, if you believe the sagas, America. But those on the east, the Swedes and the Finns and so on, they realised that there was a river route to Constantinople, which in that day was the biggest city of the world and the richest city in the world, the capital of the Roman Eastern Empire. So I wanted to just refresh the mind there. You've seen all this on TV recently. These maps have been on incessantly on the news. The Black Sea, the Sea of Artsov, you know, the areas there, and of course the Dnieper River. They're one of the great rivers of the world. And you also see what happens. How did the Vikings get there? Well, what they did, they'd sail in the Baltic, they'd go up one of the rivers that feed into the Baltic, and somewhere in the middle of Belarus now is the watershed between those rivers that flow to the Baltic and those that flow all the way to the south into the Black Sea, through the Bosphorus and into the Mediterranean, and eventually out the Pillars of Hercules and into the Atlantic, all one thing. And what they would do, they'd sail their longboats up the river, they'd come to a point where they'd get them carried across. They just carried across the watershed, no big mountains or anything, not very high country at all, and then pop their boats into the Dnieper and go all the way down out the area which is now the Kherson sort of area, the mouth of the Dnieper, across the Black Sea, down the Bosphorus. Wow, all the riches of Constantinople. And a lot of them went there just to become part of the Emperor's Guard, the Varangian Guard as it was called. But they also did a bit of trading on the way. And eventually one of them, a guy called Rurik, established a fort at a place called Kiev. There's a lot of rivers and a lot of water, and you know, and they'd trade in slaves, the Slav, the name, they would buy and sell, and they would also, essentially, and other things, Russian furs, whatnot, gold, and they established a settlement there. That was the beginning of what's called Kievan Rus, the Rus. And after a few generations, they became princes in their own right, and at about the time, just at the beginning of that book, which is about 980 or thereupon, there was a very important prince called Vladimir, or Volodymyr if you prefer the Ukrainian name. And Prince Great, he was called the Great. And not only did he rule Kiev and Rus, or that area of Ukraine, his lordship went right up to the north of Russia, Novgorod. Now Moscow was just a few mud huts in these days, Moscow and other areas. Now I wanted to start with coins now, and show you first of all an English coin. But it's the English coin of the time we're talking about, just to get it in perspective for those who perhaps relate to English history rather than necessarily Russian history. First one is this one. It's quite a nice coin. Anyone recognise it? It's an English coin of Ethelred the Unready, Ethelred II. Now, his reign and the Prince Volodymyr the Great were about they coexisted pretty much from the end of the 10th century to the first little bit of the 11th. And we all know what happened to poor old Ethelred. He got overrun by the Danes and taken over by, first of all, was Sven Forkbeard and his son, who became King Canute. So Ethelred didn't do too well, but that is the time. Didn't I flip it over and just show the other side? Nothing special. It's a hand type, the first hand type. You see a hand like that. This needs to be, that's it, hanging it down. And the Alpha and the Omega, first and the last. Yeah, biblical quote there. So that's the period we're talking about. And, you know, coinage was reasonably current across the known world at the time. Of course, this was the time in the East where you had the Arab civilizations and the Abbasid dynasty. The other coin I want to show you also, at the same time, was a gold coin of the Emperor of Constantinople at this time. And it's an important one because of the image of Christ on the one side. This is Basil II, known as the Bulgar Slayer. So it's quite an amazing thing for the early 11th century. And of course this was minted in Constantinople. You might just flip over again to show the other side, which is Emperor and his co-ruler. See the quality and beauty of something of this early age, early Middle Ages. Now, when Vladimir saw these coins, he thought, oh, gee, you know, we should have some of our own like that. And didn't have quite the exquisite workmanship of the Constantinople die sinkers. Nevertheless, he made, it was for the first time, a very good imitation of it. I should backtrack a little too. Vladimir wanted to marry the daughter of his, and they were all pagan at this point. And he said, he was told, look, you have to be one of the people of the book. And so he sort of got a bit of advice on this. Now, he was first offered Islam as a religion he might take. And for these people, whatever he took, the rest of his people would take too. He was offered Islam, and he said, oh, they don't allow alcohol, do they? Oh no, we can't be Islamic. He loved his drink. And Jewish was also a popular, you know, a possible religion. There were a lot of Jewish people at this time in that world, part of the world. But he said to himself, look, if these are the chosen of God and God allows Jews to live like this, I can't possibly be Jewish. You know, we thought that the Jews were, even then, persecuted by everybody. And, yeah. So it come down to a Christian religion, but which one? Roman Catholic, Greek Orthodox. People went to the, you know, Catholic services in the other, not too far away, I mean, Poland at that time, and they said, no, it's nothing, a bit dull, you know, you wouldn't really like that. But the people who came back from the Holy Church of the Holy Wisdom in Constantinople, Hagia Sophia, said the service was magnificent. It was so moving. So we said, right, that's the one for me. That's supposedly how the whole of the Russia became Orthodox Christian. Believe it or not. Okay, so back to Vladimir then. In the Noble auction, just recently, I had to bid very high to get this coin, a coin, the first silver coin. They emitted gold and silver. Emitted gold to try and imitate that, much more crude. There's only about 8 known, and they're pretty well all in the Hermitage Museum in St. Petersburg. But this one, this was on sale. Well, I'll use the word on sale. This is a silver Srebrnik of Vladimir, of Kiev. And it's not a bad coin. You might look at it and say, oh, it's a bit flat and so on. There's been hordes of these found all over the world, all over the European world, Eastern European mainly, and Scandinavia. Every time they find a hoard, and one was found about 2 years ago by some fishermen trying to get bait to fish into the Dnieper River and near Kiev, and he dug into the sand and found 20 or so of these. And of the 20, there are about 5 which are whole. All the rest have got cuts and chunks out of them, and that seems to be the way so many are found. So to get a round one is scarce. And anyway, there he is, Vladimir, sitting on his throne. And it actually says that in Russian, or Cyrillic script, shall we say. You know, you got the BAL there, Vlad, or B, Russian B is like a V as well, and then Mir on that side, and then this is on his stool, or stole, which was there. And you see he's holding a sceptre with a cross. He's got funny little legs which don't quite match the rest of the size of him. But and he's wearing a Byzantine type crown, pretty much like the gold coin I showed you. You want to do the other side? Upside down. Anyone recognise the sign in the middle? Anyone watching TV? The badge of the current Vladimir, the president of Ukraine. That's his badge. This was the badge of the Viking Uric that this man Vladimir descended from. And it says, in Cyrillic once again, and this is his silver. And you can see, maybe you can't, right up the top there's a C, that's the S sound in Russian, a rho, a R, E, B, R, O, Sebro. That's the Russian word for silver, or the Ukrainian word for silver. But it's the badge that's amazing. And that's, now Putin is saying, oh, you know, this is really the start of Russia. I want that place. This is the beginning of Russia, Kiev and Rus. And I think that's a fantastic thing to have, and it's a very rare thing to have. So I'm really pleased because, as Rod said right at the beginning when I started speaking, I collect medieval coins. You can't get more medieval.
This person, they come from Sherwin, is it? Sherwin? Ex-Rob Sherwin? Who did you get it from there? Sherwin? Laurie Sherwin?
It's not good silver.
No, Laurie Sherwin. Laurie Sherwin. Who owned the coin originally? Your brother Noble.
Yeah, I don't know.
Oh, you don't know?
That's what I'm asking you.
Oh, I'll find out for you.
Yeah, find out for me. I'd like to know.
Did
I'd
you
like
bid
to know.
online, Dave? Did you bid online, or were you there at the auction?
I bid it online. Yeah, I know I didn't go to the auction. I
You
didn't
get a
go
bit
to-
nervous, did you? Or was
Yeah,
it
well,
going?
all the bidding happened before I even got there. I don't think I actually had to bid. I put in a very high bid,
Right, that's
and,
what I'm
and
asking.
people bid it right up.
Right.
Yeah, so I
You
knew
didn't have to
I knew
increase.
it would be competed for.
You didn't have to increase your bid.
No, I didn't actually, but I had a really high one there.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought I've got to have that coin because I've seen it auctioned in C&G. You know, broken ones. They fetch the earth.
No,
And you can see the significance of it to the Russian collector. I mean, you know, or Ukrainian collector. You know, and that symbol in particular, that's the symbol of modern Ukraine.
But you beat the system.
No, I've missed out.
No, just on the Russian coins before we leave it. Last ones.
They've knocked it down.
You've got a few more there.
I had. I'll leave those. Oh no, this is important.
They've knocked
Going
it
back to
down
the English
because
coin.
they've knocked it down to some of you on the floor.
Just to sort of show you that all is
That
not lost
really
with
frustrates
the
me.
relationship
Interesting
between England and
David
Russia.
say
You
you
know,
put
put
in
that
a
one up
very
for me.
high bid in the first
Just the
place.
portrait side first, and then the other side. Doesn't matter much. No, that's the other, and it's 90 degrees. 90 degrees. Yeah, that. I think
That way or the other way?
Pack's okay, and show the other side. Anybody recognise this coin? That's it, like that. This is my one and only example of Harold II of England, which is not, this is the guy who got the arrow in his eye at Hastings, right? That's the guy, Harold Goodwin, remember, he's the one who's thoroughly discussed in the Bayeux Tapestry. If you, on some of the other reference. And he
Back from Stamford Bridge.
he followed Edward the Confessor as the Saxon king, but he wasn't of kingly rank. And this niggle then, William, who launched his longboats against him.
You had to fight Harold Hardrada first up in the north.
Yeah, well, he had to fight a few battles. But he also had a lovely girlfriend called Edith of Fair. And between them they had a daughter. Now, of course, when he was killed and William invaded England, what happened to this family of his? They had to flee, as he did many Saxons of high rank. Some of them ended up in the Varangian Guard of the Eastern Roman Empire. because they weren't welcome in England. There was only Normans that were welcome there. Anyway, one of the daughters fled. She fled to Russia, and she ended up marrying a successor of Vladimir. So the Russians actually have, well, the nobility have her bloodline in it, Anglo-Saxon line. Githa, his name was, and this was only about it was about 8 kings after Vladimir. It's also called Vladimir Monomarch, and it was towards the end of the 11th century. That was sort of dated exactly to after the Battle of Hastings. So that's worth knowing. Has anyone heard about Alexander Nevsky? Yeah, Alexander Nevsky. After the Kievan Rus was destroyed by Genghis Khan, the invasion of the Mongols came through in about 1240, that period, and so the Prince of Novgorod, Alexander his name was simultaneously under the Mongol yoke that already conquered Russia, and but he also had to fight the Germans or Teutonic Knights coming from the west. Anyway, there was a big film made in the 1930s, a bit of a war propaganda thing, but it's a lovely film, and I invite anybody with an interest to look at it, called Alexander Nevsky. It's got the score written by Prokofiev, fantastic music, first-rate musician, and it's the story of Alexander, and it starts off under the Mongol yoke, and Alexander has to face the knights, the knights of German knights, which were settling in Prussia, Teutonic knights, and anyway, that's the story. But there's coins of Novgorod and coins of Pskov, which are those two, and I've had these for a little while. Got them both out of the DeWitt collection. It was a famous collector of medieval coins. That one of Pskov, and this one of Novgorod. These are a little bit later than Alexander Nevsky. By the way, the whole film's on YouTube, if you can remember the name. Just a couple of little ones. And it wasn't long after that, and I'll just take the book away if I could. Sorry. It wasn't long after this, so just going back to the book. 980 to 1584. 1584 was the death of Ivan the Terrible. And then the whole Romanov Empire started after that. And then finally we've got Putin, thinking he's Peter the Great, trying to, quote, reclaim Russian territory, and hopefully doing a bad job of it.
He's had 30 attempts against his life, I believe. I was just reading, he's had 30 attempts against his life.
Yeah, well, someone will get him one day.
Yeah, well,
They're doing the Hitler.
it's a crying shame, actually, that he's doing what he's doing. It just doesn't belong in the 21st century. But, you know, we've all got our ideas on that. Anyway, thank you for listening.
Well, I think that brings us to the end of our formal part. I just want to say a few words to finish this up. I think we've all had a good day. You know, it's a very, shall we say, broad breadth of numismatics that we talk about here. Right up to the recent times and some of the ancient times. So we had the beginnings of coinage, and virtually the last ones that were issued in recent times by Elizabeth II, you know, in the final stages. So we've covered some 2,500 years of history. But basically it's been a bit of fun, and I hope we've all enjoyed it, and something we should probably think more about doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, would be good.
So, you know, anyone got any further comments to make on it before we close?
I totally agree. You should do it more often.
Yeah, okay. I think
It's
we've all enjoyed
hard to
ourselves.
do it in the day, though. That's the problem.
Well, I think daytime, see, a lot of, you know, looking around here, none of you are all spring chickens anymore. And I think the reality about life is that you sort of like to be out in the daylight. You don't want to be working away from here at 10 o'clock at night or 9 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
But
During the day, quite a
as
few
some of us
people
have
work
found
still,
out,
Colin.
you know, you can park down below. It doesn't matter if we
But
have
not
to
during the day.
Yeah, but not during the day, except it's a public holiday.
Yeah.
But if, you know, I've sort of, we'll find more time to get in here.
Except for Sunday.
And yeah, we can do it Sundays. I'll give you more Christian religions ones, and here we go. Done your church then. But no, anyhow, it's been great to see you all, and thanks very much for coming.
Yeah, beauty.